Welcome back to the show. This is Mike Kegley with Brad Sturdy, Larry Smith. We have a treat again. We have a returning guest, Peter Arbogast, the voice of SC Sports since 1989. I will tell you, sir, the last time you were on, I got email messages talking about how great it was that we had you on the show. And then I got a comment about how bad my voice sounded right after I stopped talking and you answered a question. Thanks for coming on, sir.
Yeah, and there's two guys that are in college football that I know well, Mark Johnson of Colorado and Paul Keels of Ohio State, that make me sound like soprano. So don't feel bad.
Wow. We're not going to have them on the show. Tony, the producer, let's draw a line through them.
Don't put those guys on. We sound bad enough without that.
Well, were you surprised, because you've seen Kalen DeBoer and what he did up at Washington, are you surprised that Alabama appears, at least early in the season, to have not missed a beat when he took over?
Well, let's keep in mind that Alabama just reloads.
Yeah.
They recruit themselves. They don't have to make it's like when Pete Carroll was at SC. I asked him and Ed Orgeron, how's recruiting going? He goes, the phones are ringing off the hook. They didn't have to call anybody. So, and we saw Kalen at Fresno State too. This guy's a good coach. So he stepped into a great situation, no question about it. And let's see how he recruits, which is probably going to be fine, and how those guys do for him in 3 or 4 years. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's Alabama. Come on.
It's harder to not win there than to win, I think, in some cases. USC, they look a little bit better defensively. Look like they're competent defensively. Look like they're playing much better. Is the defense better, or has it been what's the story here?
We were so starved for defense that anything that looks better is like the best Christmas ever. And so, yeah, they look better. They're tackling, and the secondary looks better, and they've got some depth to them, and they've got a good coaching staff now. That the offensive guys are doing their thing, and the defensive guys are doing their thing, and the portal has been good to them, and so they're better than they were. How much better? Yeah. How good is LSU? Who knows? So we'll know more. We'll know more after Michigan, and we'll know a lot more in a few weeks after Penn State at the Coliseum. Call me then. But I think they're better. They're better than they were. It's clear that they're better than they were.
Yeah, D'Anton Lynn really seems to have put some energy. When I watched the game against LSU, we knew LSU defensively wasn't very good, and I was expecting it was going to be the battle of two offenses. But that USC team, they hit first and they hit hard. Is that all one man, or is there more pieces going on that we don't know about?
Well, they brought in a national championship coach from the next division down, and guys who have been head coaches to be position coaches. They only kept one position, defensive coach, the DL guy, Sean Nua. And I'll tell you what, LSU's defense is about as improved as SC's defense was. And so it was quite the game that I called on the nose. I said it would be the last play of the game, and I was right. I'm going to take that. You don't get many of those calls. And I think this Michigan game has got a chance to be that kind of game too. Look, Michigan's losses to the number one team in the country, they didn't look very good doing it, and they haven't looked great otherwise. It's obviously not last year's Michigan team, but we're going into the Big House for the first time since the late 1950s. There's going to be 100 million people there, and it's a good team still. And so we'll find out more about ourselves. It's a big test, first road test. That's a tough road test. At the start of the season, guys, when people would say, "What do you think?" and I'd say, "Well, they could go 7-5, they'd go 11-1," and the one was the Michigan game to me. And I said, if they win 2 or 3, if they beat LSU and they win 2 of the 3, LSU, Penn State, Michigan, if they win 2 of those 3, they got a pretty good shot to run the table the rest of the way and get to Notre Dame at 10-1 maybe. But now you get greedy as a fan and a broadcaster. You want to win them all. I'm hopeful. The line from August to now has switched by 15 points. You could have got SC and 8.5, and now you're given 6.5. So I think it's going to be a great game. I really do.
Miller Moss is just another in the stable of Lincoln Riley quarterbacks. I mean, he's obviously done well, but he looks fantastic. I mean, he looks like he's a guy who's so poised for stepping into this situation, and just looks like can make all the throws. What do we need to know about him?
Well, he's been in the system forever, backing up everybody. And he grew up like when he was 2, he was an SC fan living in LA. So we got pictures of him literally like as a 7-year-old wearing SC stuff, throwing the ball. He looked good in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville, but that was kind of a JV game where there are a ton of guys that were missing the game for both teams. But he did look really good. And he understands this offense very, very well. And he's always been ready to step in if he had to. And he did a couple of times have to. He's not going to fool anybody, remind you of Caleb Williams or any of these dual threat quarterbacks. He doesn't run very well. He got a 7-yarder last week. We were pretty excited about that. That brought him back to plus in the yardage category. But he's a flinger and he's a pretty smart guy. And the guy backing him up is no joke. Mayava is the kid from UNLV, was really good there last year, and he is a dual threat guy. So if something happens to Moss, they got no problem putting Mayava back in.
Yeah, that team is so deep on multiple levels. How is Lincoln Riley done in recruiting, particularly on the lines? It seems like the Big Ten, it's so important to not only have a good starting 5, but you got to have 2, 3 really capable backups, because it just gets to be a rough season and a physical toll on these guys.
Yeah, they're probably not there yet. This is year 3, and then they didn't find out right away. They're going into the Big Ten. That was kind of a different feel to it. So Benny Wiley, the strength and conditioning guy, I mean, the team and Moss has put on like 1,400 pounds. Now, is it muscle? Does it slow you down? Is it fat? You know what? But it's big, and big is good. You can teach big, actually. You can't teach big and fast. So you want that, and you can teach strong as well. There is more depth on this team, and I noticed that because there are guys who started last year in various positions who are not the starters this year, but are still on the team. So that's good, and there is more depth, and they are recruiting well. Top 10-ish sort of classes, and the recruiting now is sort of geared towards the Big Ten, which is different than recruiting the Pac-12, other than when you play Oregon, Washington, UCLA. So things are on the uptick, I think. And yeah, sure, if they go 7-5 again, I think there's going to be some grumbling, but it doesn't have that feel to it. It feels like this is a better football team than the first 2 we had. And look, Lincoln stepped into a landmine situation. I love Clay Helton. He's one of my best friends. I talk to him online all the time, but he left the cupboard kind of empty, especially on the lines. So it takes some time to rebuild, and this has been a definite rebuild, and this is the middle stages of it. They may be a little ahead of time, maybe a little.
When you look at on the other side of the ball, they're going to Michigan. What's the biggest concern, the thing that Michigan does that gives them trouble? What the SC says, what about Michigan makes it difficult?
Well, LSU came right out and said it, and I think Michigan's going to say the same thing, even though Alex Orji's going to start at quarterback. They're going to run the ball. And LSU said, we're going to run the ball. And they did, and they ran it pretty well. The guy that ran it best broke his leg, and he's out for the rest of the year, which is tough for them. They're going to run the ball. Michigan's going to run. And SC gave up a pretty decent amount of yardage to LSU, but they were in bend but don't break mode. And when LSU got down there a couple of times, they had to settle for a field goal, and they threw an incomplete pass on a 4th down and at the goal line. And there were some situations where SC was backed up, but their defense held solid. And I think you're hoping for the same sort of thing. I think they'd love to make Orji pass, because he's just not very experienced, maybe, but he is home. That does help. But Edwards and the other guy, Mullings, is going to get the ball, and they run for 190, 200 yards on SC. It's going to be a long day, because they're going to be on the field all day long against an SC defense that's okay against the run. They're okay.
Now, is this the first time that you broadcast a game from Michigan?
Hallelujah, brother. Hallelujah. I've been going a long time, and the one great thing about changing conferences for me is I get to see new stuff. I don't have to go to Corvallis, Oregon. I don't have to go to Tucson. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to seeing it in person instead of watching the big house on TV. And I get to go to Iowa. I've been to Penn State. I've been to Ohio State. I've been to Minnesota. get to go to Wisconsin. I've never been there. Go to Spartyville. Love going to these new places and seeing teams that I haven't seen before. That's all I have left in life. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. I'm going to get there so early. I'm going to walk around the campus. I'm going to talk. I'm going to go to tailgate part. I get kicked out of my booth virtually the entire afternoon because they do the pregame show until half an hour before we go, before kickoff. So I get there and set my stuff up, and then I got 3 hours and I'm not doing anything. So I'm going to go geocaching on campus. I'm going to do everything I can. If you look like you don't know what geocaching is, maybe you do. I don't know. I'm looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to it since the day they announced the schedule.
Is there so when you go into the big house here and you see this obviously it's one of the storied things there. Is there, what else? Not just house. Do you think that the time change is going to be tough for SC? Is the 100,000 people? They're used to having they're used to having a stadium that holds 100,000. But is the time change going to be an issue for them? What's the other concerns about this?
We haven't had a monster crowd since, gosh. You go to Notre Dame, you get 77. That Coliseum now holds 77. Used 100 a million years ago, but not anymore. We go to Notre Dame, it's pretty noisy there some. And that's a full house. And the Rose Bowl, we played in 2017, which is, that's 7 years ago now. So you get some big crowds. These guys have never played in front of a crowd like this. You go to Penn State, you see something like this. I think that's the biggest deal. I love marching bands. I can't wait to see the Michigan band running down the field doing Hail to the victors. All of it. They're going to be dressed in blue and maize, and the student section is going to be doing their thing, and the banner is out. They come out and touch the banner. All that. I love that stuff. The game itself is great. I love that other stuff. What's going to bother them the most? Probably the crowd, probably the sound, probably the noise. Sure.
Well, Peter, thanks for coming on the show. That was great. And maybe what they'll do to really let you see Michigan and get a flavor is you can be the guy who polices the tunnel when the two teams are in there at the same time.
Yeah, I hear that's a lot of fun.
Do they have anywhere in the Pac-12 that allowed
Notre Dame?
Okay,
and it's a regular game for us every other year, and there were fights in the tunnel every year, if not on the field.
Yeah.
Our security guy, who was not the largest man, but a former CHP guy, he got in the middle of it. Ed Orgeron got busted up in that thing one time. You bust up Ed Orgeron, you've done some work now. That's a tough dude. Yeah, that's one of those places where they can go up and in at the same time. And they can get ugly.
Thanks for coming on. That was Peter Arbogast, who is the voice of SC Sports, and he's done that since 1989, folks, a friend of the show. We appreciate him coming on, and we will be right back after this commercial break.
Red Grange wasn't just a football player. He was a legend. Discover the untold story of Illini great Red Grange in a new novel by Doug Vilhard called The Golden Age of Red. This captivating book takes you back to the 1920s when a humble young Illinois player transformed into the galloping ghost and electrified the nation. Get your copy of The Golden Age of Red by Doug Vilhard today. Available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. We continue here, bottom of the hour here on Big Sports Radio, trying to get my voice together. Larry Smith, Mike Kegley, Brad Sturdy, glad you're here with us. Another big football weekend. This is a game that I had kind of marked on my calendar when we, back in the spring, summer when they first came out. It's Michigan, USC at the Big House. And joining us once again, our friend John Borton is here, senior columnist with the Wolverine.com. Been covering for 34 years. John, welcome back. I got to ask you off the top, two questions. Did you ever think you'd see Michigan play USC as conference members? And number two, to have USC visit the big house in September. I mean, this is just talk about groundbreaking stuff here.
Absolutely. Never in a million years did I think that. I mean, even before I started covering Michigan, I remember watching Michigan and USC in the Rose Bowl. And that, I mean, that was very special. And it was at the end of the year. I could not picture them, coming, I mean, to Ann Arbor as a Big Ten team, certainly. And, you know, it's going to feel a little bit like Pasadena because it's going to be 80 degrees here in Ann Arbor. But I mean, I always envisioned someday if USC came and it was like Ohio State time, you know, late November, and you could maybe see a little bit of snow swirling around and see how the Southern Californians could handle that. But you know, it is going to be a very warm day. It's summer like up here, and so you know it will have a familiar meteorological feel, at least to Michigan USC.
Yeah, certainly the huge crowd. I mean, the Rose Bowl seating, 90,000 plus. And of course, you guys, packed the house there as well. It's funny. We were talking here in the break in terms of the two power programs. I mean, historically great programs, Michigan, USC, but both entered this game with some question marks.
There's no question about it. I would say USC has fewer question marks because, they get out of the gate at 2-0. They've taken down LSU. They're piling up huge numbers on offense. And it seems like their defense has come around. They're fighting off the Pac-10 or 12 doesn't play any defense sort of mode. Now, of course, the Big Ten team, maybe they decided they would have to toughen things up a little bit. Michigan, on the other hand, is a far cry at this point from that dream season last year. Arguably the best season in Michigan football history, 15-0. They take down Alabama in the Rose Bowl and they destroy Washington in that national championship game. You had the J.J. McCarthy's and the Blake Corums and the great defense. And all of a sudden now you have a lot of pieces back from that defense, but you lost your defensive coordinator. You've got Wink Martindale, who has come in and installed his system. It didn't quite click in that Texas game. That defense gave up what to Michigan fans was a shocking number of points. And you've had all kinds of trouble on offense. You've replaced your entire offensive line, and that's a unit now that is trying to gel and get used to each other. The quarterback that started the first three games, Davis Warren, threw 3 picks against Arkansas State, gets pulled, and now you've got a very different style of quarterback coming into this one. Alex Orji's going to get the start in this game. He's a junior. He's very mobile. He can run. The question is, how well can he throw? He's thrown 7 passes in his career. So I would say most of the question marks are on the Michigan side of the ball in this one.
Yeah. We talked with some other Michigan writers and insiders here over the offseason talking about this season, obviously not just all the great things on the field, but some stuff off the field as well. A lot to talk about right now in Ann Arbor. I'm curious, with so many of them were the feeling we got was like, hey, listen, yeah, we lost a lot, big changes in the coaching staff with Harbaugh out and Moore is in, et cetera, as you just mentioned. But man, we got pieces and we're going to be okay. Was that just hubris? Is that feeling kind of changed now that you played some games, Texas game happened, like you said, a lot of concerns coming out of that. Are the expectations now different than maybe they were a month ago?
I think so. I really do. I think Michigan got slapped with a bit of cold reality in that Texas game. Now, understand, I believe that Texas is a shoo-in for the college football playoff. I believe that they're going to be battling for the national championship. That said, that was a Texas team that came in, and even as good as they are, Michigan's defense was a little bit disjointed in that one and gave up some things that you didn't expect. Last year, Michigan defense, they get a team into a 3rd and long situation, and I don't care if it was a good team, an Ohio State, an Alabama, and all of a sudden it would be time to tee off. you weren't getting anything other than putting your quarterback's health in danger. This year against Texas, 10 for 16 conversions on third down. It was just a shocking aspect to it. And I think Michigan's defense is going to be better than that, but you have to have the whole package. And right now, there are so many question marks and so many issues on the offense. The formula for Michigan to win this year was going to be, and this is why everyone had a little bit of confidence coming in, okay, that's going to be a shutdown defense that's going to keep you in every single game. And the offense, if they can just score enough, 24 points, whatever it might be, that's going to get you the victories. Well, Texas put that to bed in a hurry. And now some cracks in the armor have opened up to the point that, okay, yeah, you're still worried about the USCs and the Oregons and the Ohio States, but you better be worried about some of these other teams, the Minnesotas and the Indianas and the Michigan States that would like to come up and get a little revenge for everything that's happened over the last 3 years.
I know, and we're talking to John Borton, by the way, just a reminder, senior columnist with the Wolverine.com. Has also written some books as well on the Michigan football program. I'm curious that now we're in this new Big Ten, right? And so it is literally the great unknown. We are pioneers. We got past Mississippi and we're heading west to see what's out there, right? Way back when. There are no divisions now. It is, like you said, the schedules they're doing what they can to make it, equitable over a 5-year period. But how big is it for Michigan to, Rome wasn't built today, wasn't torn down in a day, and you're coming off the national championship. How important is it for Michigan to have a good showing in this first year, to not allow programs like Oregon or USC to kind of come in and kind of edge them out in terms of their position in the Big Ten? Am I making sense of this question?
Sure. I understand what you're saying. And I think that this schedule that Michigan has, quite honestly, would be the perfect schedule for last year's team, because I think that Michigan you would have those classic matchups that everybody was rubbing their hands about. Oh, Michigan, USC in the big house. This is going to be amazing. Oregon there and those sorts of things. Going to Washington. Hey, going to Washington is no bargain, because I've been out there and I've seen the everybody come up for the sailgate and the whole business. But this year, I think you're up against it if you're Michigan. I really do. And yes, they could have a good effort and make this a fourth quarter ball game. But I do not believe that this team right now is equipped to give you the kind of classic Michigan USC showdown that the names imply. Same as what happened with, people talked about it all off season. Can you even imagine Texas coming up to the big house? Well, that game was over in the first half. It really was, because Texas, as I said, was so efficient on third down, took command, forced some big mistakes out of Michigan, and really it was not what people were expecting. So this game coming up has that sort of potential. It's up to Michigan to show that it can make the kind of jump that it needs to have that defense keep them in the game and not make the turnovers on offense and give USC short fields. If that starts to happen, then you're not going to have anybody talking about a classic.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. You mentioned Davis Warren getting pulled, and we've got the new quarterback this year. One thing we've seen talked about quite a bit here in the opening of the season, opening few weeks, is that Michigan has a walk-on for a starting quarterback. I think people were just kind of, again, caught up really in the mass changes in Harbaugh and to the Chargers and everything else. And I think that was maybe lost on some people. How did that happen? Listen, given credit that he played well enough in the spring to earn the job, but how did that happen that you didn't have, maybe go to the transfer portal and grab a quarterback to maybe be a bigger challenger for the starting job?
That was a point of big discussion in the spring. Do they go out and try to get another quarterback? And that was much talked about. And that talk has kind of circled back. Why didn't they? This kind of thing. But there's some elements to it that you can sort of understand it. Sharon Moore, new coach, he's looking at what he's got. He has some confidence in these guys. He has a 7th year quarterback in Jack Tuttle that came back, that had played behind Michael Penix Jr. and behind J.J. McCarthy. And though as good as they were the reason that this guy didn't play. And so he was the backup last year, but he's been hurt much of the offseason. He's still trying to heal. Unbelievable story in Davis Warren. The kid has leukemia in high school, gets through all that, and is able to play. We talk about preferred walk-on. Part of that preferred walk-on is he didn't get to play much in his junior and senior seasons. Brian Griese was a preferred walk-on for Michigan, and we know what he did. So I think there was that thought that this kid has got an NFL arm and he's really going to be good. So, and the other thing was you had Alex Orji, which a lot of people thought, okay, here's your guy. This is where he takes the step forward. He's J.J. McCarthy with his feet. And he's got a strong arm, but it's that accuracy that everybody's questioning. So it's not like you didn't have pieces, but there's no question that question is coming up. Why didn't they? Why didn't they go and get a little insurance?
Yeah. Great point. This is why we have you on to answer these questions for us. Now we can tell others the same thing. Looking ahead to this weekend again, it's at home. It's going to be, national TV, all the things we talk about. If Michigan doesn't get this, if they get the win, great. I mean, everything, it's a good reset. You go into the rest of the season and you can move forward. If they don't get the win, if they come up short or they play poorly, what does it mean for the trajectory of the season? I mean, what happens next for this program coming off the highs of last year? And again, trying to, at this point, I think of your 2 losses in September, try to kind of rediscover their identity.
There's no question. I mean, it's going to be, if that happened, it would be a situation where, okay, this is desperation time. This is a Michigan team that really has to win out through the regular season, somehow win these road games, go out to Washington and win, find a way to beat Oregon at home and somehow go down to Columbus. But at that point, it would be circling the wagons in Schembechler Hall and these guys saying to each other, nobody believes in us. We're all we've got, and try to pull one of those off. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a hard dose of reality. I had a one-on-one sit down with Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel just recently, and he pointed out the fact that Michigan has 16 players off last year's roster on NFL teams right now, and had 8 to 10 more that were in NFL camps. So you're talking about like 26 guys from last year's roster that were of pro potential or pros now that aren't here. And so far, it's shown. I think you have some Michigan fans or a fair segment saying, look, we kind of knew this was coming. We got our hopes up anyway, but yeah, you're going to have others that say, well, why didn't they do this or that better? You mentioned the quarterback thing, and certainly there will be other questions that arise anytime you drop 2 in September.
Fans will be fans, right? No matter what, even coming off the national championship.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And those are staggering numbers too. I mean, 16, like you said, that's just, and you're exactly right. That's just how good and how deep this team was. John, we appreciate the insight. We know you'll at least enjoy the experience. Hopefully you'll enjoy a win on Saturday, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right. Great to be with you. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much. Once again, John Borton, check him out. He's a senior columnist for the Wolverine.com, a veteran writer up there. We appreciate his insights on this Michigan program as they look to build on that national title from last year. More to come here on Big Sports Radio.
This is the Run My Own Business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
Cooper Perkins joining us now. He's the host of the BLEAV in USC podcast. Cooper, good to see you today. Listen, we were talking a moment ago about this is on paper, right? Marquee matchup, two of the great programs in college football history. But right now, it's Michigan having some issues. Tell us about USC and what you've seen here in the opening games.
Well, it's really interesting because I went into game one and I'd been on the record about this pretty much the entire offseason saying the only thing that I care about seeing against LSU is, does this team tackle and does the defense know where it wants to be? Is it aligned appropriately? Does it seem to have a clear comprehension of the scheme? Was there any kind of cohesion on that side of the ball? That's all I cared about. That was the only thing I was interested in. And within the first two series of that LSU game, it became readily apparent that not only could this team tackle far better than it has in years, there was clearly a plan in place on the defensive side of the football, which immediately changes the calculus on how you consider this USC team and its place in the Big Ten and the national landscape. Because we know Lincoln Riley's offenses are always going to score points. Lincoln Riley has lost one game in his coaching career when the defense has held the opponent under 30 points. So you don't need much when it comes to pairing a Lincoln Riley offense with a defense in order to win games. The question was always going to be, how improved is this USC defense? And I think the early returns on that answer are significantly improved. It was Utah State in week 2, and it's a shutout, but I can't express just how ludicrous of an idea it is that USC shut out anybody. I mean, they couldn't have shut out a high school team down the street for the last 2 years. So the idea that regardless of who the opponent was, that they executed to that level was at some level shocking, but more so encouraging, I think. So looking at this matchup with Michigan, it's fascinating because, all offseason, my stance on this game has been that it's a 95% USC's losing this game. My thoughts always being, I saw Stanford after Jim Harbaugh. I remember what that looked like, and that train kept rolling for about 6-7 years before it ran out of gas, and had every expectation that Michigan would be the same kind of dynamic, but that really hasn't proven to be true to this point. Nonetheless, if I'm USC, it's an uncomfortable game all of a sudden because it's gone from being a playing with house money kind of thing against the reigning national champs on the road to suddenly being a game that you could argue is a must win from a momentum standpoint, that in order to continue fostering this belief in the ability to win big games, the ability to be contender, you kind of have to go win this game now.
It's ironic that we had thought it was going to be the Michigan defense against the USC offense. Now all of a sudden the Michigan defense is not very good and the USC offense is great and the defense seems to be as good. What has D'Anton Lynn brought to this that has allowed this team to shine so much? Because I was like you, the first two series, USC was fast. They hit hard and they hit first. I haven't seen that since a certain Pete Carroll was walking the sidelines.
No, and you're spot on with that. It's been a very long time. You have to go all the way back to 2008, the last time this team had a defense that was even respectable, let alone good. I think looking at D'Anton Lynn and what he does, he has his 3 pillars that he's, so vocal about. And the one that really stands out to me is obnoxious communication. I think that's the bridge between where this defense was under Alex Grinch as opposed to where it is under D'Anton Lynn. And I say that because there were so many instances for the last 2 seasons under Lincoln Riley with Alex Grinch as a defensive coordinator where there was confusion. There were players aligned in improper places. There was a lack of understanding of what they were trying to accomplish. And seeing that change, I think, has freed up these players to play a much more instinctual brand of football. I do also think that there needs to be a lot of credit that is given to the strength and conditioning staff. Benny Wiley, the strength coach, got his marching orders this offseason to get these guys stronger, put on weight, and put on good weight. And they executed that, gaining 1,400 pounds collectively as a team. I think when you look at that physicality, though, it all comes down to a mentality. And that's what's so interesting, that it's hard to really describe what D'Anton Lynn has brought from that standpoint, because I don't know if we can be perfectly present with it outside of the building, right? What do those meetings look like with the defensive line, the linebacking core? What do those conversations look like? Because clearly, in addition to being freed up to play fast and play natural football, there is a mentality shift that has completely changed what the dynamic looks like and how these players choose to seek out contact and deliver the hits, rather than being passive. I think passivity was such a big problem on the USC defense the last couple of years. So with this now morphed brand of defense that prioritizes obnoxious communication and being the aggressor has really unlocked some pieces that I think have been laying dormant for the majority of their college careers.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've got the big change, of course, that finally took place July 1st with USC and the other three teams coming into the Big Ten. What seems like in the offseason, largely because of the Trojans' lack of defense, the focus was on Washington and Oregon coming in. How do you see USC fitting in this new world of college football in the Big Ten this season and beyond?
I think this is a fantastic thing. I think in some sense, it is sad that the Pac-12 is now going to be a glorified Mountain West reboot. There was a tremendous history there. There were rivalries and all kinds of great things. But as far as I'm concerned, as a USC alum and a USC lifer, the Pac-12 did nothing for the University of Southern California. It took money from it and redistributed it to the Sisters of the Poor in Washington State and Oregon State. No knock on those universities and programs. They simply were friends with the big boys at the right time. That's the only thing that separates those programs from being Fresno State or San Jose State. For USC, I think that the financial commitment is there to be a contender in the Big Ten. And I think that the administrative support and the booster support is there. I think it's going to be exceptionally difficult to sustain a level that Ohio State has been able to build. I think the only thing that unravels Ohio State is impatience. If they choose to move off of Ryan Day prematurely, I could see that potentially being a significant mistake for Ohio State. But I think this season where USC fits is precisely where they want to be. I think they have every right to think that they can be a top 2 to 4 team in the Big Ten. They can contend to make a college football playoff. I think that is ultimately the goal this season, as opposed to winning the Big Ten. I think that for USC going forward, though, this is a great position because it pairs them with brands that are appropriate peers. Michigan, Ohio State, to some extent Wisconsin, right? The Big Ten is littered with these, not just college football, but college sports legacy programs. And frankly, I think that's where USC belongs as opposed to in the Pac-12. I think Oregon and Washington coming along was very frustrating to a lot of people in the USC ecosystem because every intention clearly was made to leave those schools behind, particularly Oregon. USC does have an Oregon problem on the West Coast as far as football is concerned, and making the transition to the Big Ten, leaving them behind, would have gone a long way towards poking some holes in that Oregon armor, so to speak. But nonetheless, I think that USC is in a great position to be a competitor, and that's all you can ask for. They're not going to dominate the Big Ten because the Big Ten is going to be too big and deep for anyone to dominate for too long, and that's a great, beautiful thing for college football.
Totally agree with all of that. And I think you're right that USC has a brand. We know if you're a college football purist, you know all about the program. But to your point, it has shifted right now. The attention has been very much on any program east of the Rockies. And USC now puts themselves back in the conversation, not only in 2024, but also beyond. Cooper Perkins, host of the BLEAV in USC podcast. We appreciate it, man. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, gentlemen. Likewise.